good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Friday, July 28th, 2023. And our top story today, Hollywood plunges into an all-out war on the heels of a streaming revolution. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Rahul Telang is a professor at Carnegie Mellon University. He's also the author of Streaming, Sharing, and Stealing. Rahul, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation. Let's talk about streaming because a lot of us have cut the cord. They've done it for quite some time. But during the pandemic, there was a significant amount of people who logged in the streaming services. How have you seen the growth of streaming and what has been the impact culturally?
Growth of streaming was already happening, even before the pandemic came in. Netflix had become like a pretty big player. The pandemic just accelerated it in a tremendous way because people could not go to theaters, people could not meet. So naturally, they gravitated towards TV, and TV means streaming platform. So I think streaming at some level was already growing. It's just that the pandemic accelerated growth, not just in the US, worldwide. So if you look at the numbers, the streaming growth outside US has been just tremendous.
Yeah, and it has been. And I mean, I think just about everybody you talk to has a Netflix account.
Absolutely.
And I know they've tried different streaming or tiered models for pricing. And we can get into that conversation later about how high can a Netflix actually grow. But I want to ask you, there's a lot of strife going on in Hollywood. The writer strike and the actors kind of siding with the writers. What has been the impact of streaming on some of these other vocations that, the writers and the actors?
I think, if you look at very carefully, the biggest stumbling block for the actors and the writers is that the kind of money they get by writing either the show or the movie script or acting. That has been going on for a long time, except that in the streaming world, what they use the word residual, that is, they get paid when the show is being played again and again. The residuals used to be one major way they used to get compensation, because if the show becomes hit, it will get played multiple times across different station, across different time, and there was a way for them to get compensation. In the streaming world, it become very difficult to say what is a hit show, how many people are watching it, and how much compensation should be given to them. So they feel like even though streaming companies seem to be doing well, they are not getting the compensation they think they deserve. Obviously, the streaming company says, no, you're getting a fair bit of compensation. So, that has created the major issue that with the growth of streaming, it has become really hard to figure out how are we going to split the pie, basically. And I think that has become the major stumbling block. And then obviously with the growth of AI, a lot of writers feel like, why do you need me? The AI will come and replace me. The script writer will say, why do you need me? You can always, hire a chat GPT and write the dialogue, write the scene. My work will be minimal. So, all of that has basically combined together to create what we call as the firestorm.
Yeah, and I think what I'm not an economist by trade, but I think what we're describing here is you're actually commoditization at some level. And that's not to say that a writer, I mean, these are great writers, they write for wonderful shows, but with the takeoff of streaming, you've got a lot more platforms, you've got a lot more potential for content. It really just means that price lowering just comes naturally as part of this expansion.
There are two sides to it. If one way to think about it is the demand of the content has also gone up. So you used to write the content for one network, the reach was limited, XYZ. Now there's so many people watching it, so the reach has gone up. I think that we haven't figured out a way that how do we compensate somebody. So for example, a show written in the US now watched by somebody in Australia or somebody in Germany or somebody in South Korea, there hasn't been a very clear cut guideline that how should the writer get compensated when the show is streamed in Australia. And those people have also grown, so the show is being watched outside US significantly. And my feeling is that there is no clear cut agreement that how should the compensation go. So commoditization obviously has been going on, but I would say that that has been going on with the growth of computer for last so many years. Computers have come in, IT has come in, technology has come in, and the work has become commoditized. So I don't think that is really very drastically different, except that we just haven't figured out how to live in this world where the new technology has come in, and that can potentially substitute writing, acting, copyright, however you want to think about that.
Yeah, and last question before we go to a commercial break, and you bring up tracking, and I know Nielsen, which has been around forever. They used to track all the major TV shows back when everyone watched terrestrial TV. They have really moved to start tracking streaming, but as you said, it's not a perfect science, is it, sir? I mean, it really is, because you could have I'm sorry to interrupt, but you could have a masked IP address. You could be going into a VPN. There's no way to determine where Jeff Snyder and Dr. Telang are logging in from and how long you're watching for.
I think it's a little more complicated. If you look at the TV network or the movies, when somebody bought a DVD, somebody watched a TV show, somebody watched a movie, one can actually put the compensation directly. So for example, I watched the TV, my advertising money went up because so many people watch Friends, the NBC collected a lot of money, and then one can figure out how the money will go downstream. Same thing happened with the DVD, same thing happened with the movie or theatrical visit. So there was a way to put the compensation, or what I call as the value of the content. So the value of the content, at least broadly, people understood.
Yeah.
Now a show comes in on the Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, it's very hard to put the value of that content to that particular streaming platform. And basically that means to the actors and the writers who wrote it, because how many people watched it may not be the direct measure. Because let's just say you watch Netflix for 8 hours a day, and I watch Netflix for 1 hour a day. We both pay the same subscription. We both pay 15, 17, 20, whatever number it is. So you watch for 1,000, hours in whatever time. I watched only for 10 hours. We basically paying both the same money. How does that money go back to the writer or to Netflix? And so you can imagine that the matrix become really complicated. And I think that has been like a major issue, where the writers are saying that, people are watching, share the data with us. The network obviously don't want to share the data. But I think even after sharing the data, it's not entirely fair, because how do you actually measure what is the value of the content to the network, and how will they give the money back to the writers and the actors depending on the value? So the long and short is that in the network world, in the TV world, in the movie world, there was a money that you can assign to that particular piece of content. And you can disagree that how the money is allocated, but we sort of agreed that, okay, Friends generate so much revenue and it should go down to the writers and whatever XYZ. Now the show comes on the Netflix, Orange is the New Black. The trouble is that the writer of the Orange is the New Black, they'll say, the show is the big hit. How do you figure out how big a hit it is to the Netflix per se? And how should they distribute the revenue downstream? I think that has been like a major challenge.
Yeah, apparently people are striking over it. Rahul, I need to take a very hold that thought. I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about streaming, the writer's strike, and a lot more. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. We're joined this morning by Rahul Telang of Carnegie Mellon University. Rahul, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah,
great to join you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I have so many questions. This is kind of like the new frontier. Even though it's not new, it's continually to evolving. And I think that's what's exciting about it, but also challenging. As you were talking, and I'm thinking back in time to iTunes and kind of what Apple did to create iTunes and to take all that music, make it available, and to pay the artist for their work. And they charge 99 cents a tune. Some of that would be distributed to the artist, presumably the label. Is this issue that we're talking about with streaming, is it analogous to that? Like, can you follow that same path in order to come up with a resolution?
I'm not entirely sure. Of course, you can dispute about how much money should go from Spotify or Apple to the artist, to the label. But all of those, in all of those cases, every time a music got streamed or bought on the iTunes, there was a money associated with it. That is 99 cents were paid for somebody to download or stream the music or buy the music. And then the question is that how should I distribute those 99 cents? How much should go to the artist? How much should go to the major label? How much should Apple keep? And, obviously that becomes like a challenging issue. In the streaming world, it's really hard. So for example, Jeffrey watches a movie, I don't know, like half an hour or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. How should somebody calculate how much money did Netflix make because you watch some show for some amount of time? And because we can't figure out the value, it's really difficult to dive the value because we don't know what the value is. And that goes back to the bigger question that how do you figure out the value of the content when there's so much content or so many streaming platforms? And I think, bottom line is that is really a major stumbling block. But how do you actually figure out approximately what the value of the content is? And even though it may not be perfect, that even though not everybody might agree, but at least there's some sort of a consensus that, okay, approximately this seems like a reasonable way to define a value. And I think once we have at least some notion of that, then we can go back to the question that you just raised about Apple Music or Spotify. okay, the value of the song is 99 cents. And then we can fight over that, how much money should go XYZ. Right now, we don't know what the value of that content is. And because we don't know, we basically argue that how are we going to split that?
Yeah. And, I probably am not a good measure because anytime I watch something, I'm multitasking. So am I really focused
Actually,
on?
you may not be a good measure, but you are exactly the kind of people are. They're watching streaming, but at the same time, they're listening
I'm doing
to
work.
music, doing work. How do you decide how much of the value to the content to you is? And I don't want to go further down, but basically that's the kind of question we are trying to answer. That can we put the value of the content to a streaming company?
Yeah.
I mean,
And is it better? Because right now there's a flat fee. Is it better to do a flat fee, a smaller flat fee, and do ad-based revenue? Because that ad-based revenue would theoretically be variable and almost like terrestrial or the old networks, the old school networks. There's value, there's additional value because you can assign value now. So is that a better model long-term to reward people, actors, writers, gaffers, all the people that support the production, that ad-supported model? Is that a better model?
I mean, all depends, the ad-supported model, when the network television was there, everything was basically ad-supported. The streaming company came in, like Netflix came in, and they said, we will not serve you ad. You can watch the content, you can binge watch the content, you can watch the whole content. And you don't have to worry about every Tuesday, 8 p.m., Seinfeld will come or Friends will come. And I think that inconvenience actually prompted the streaming companies to basically enter the market. That was their selling point. Obviously, people don't like to see too many ads either. They would like to actually skip the ad. If you remember, we used to have DVRs, then we skip the ad, and they'll complain that people are skipping the ads, and so on and so forth. So ad supported is approximately a way to kind of figure out how much money is associated with the content. I just don't think that will be one prominent way to go forward, because I don't think there's going to be huge business model based on the ad supported only. That will play a role, but I don't think they'll play a major role. It's still going to be subscription. It's still going to be quote unquote ad-free network. And the question will come back to what we are saying, talking.
Yeah, I typically don't mind the ads so much, Rahul, if they're placed appropriately. But if they're right in the middle of a cliffhanger or right, in between, sometimes the ad placements are not ideal. Let me just to finish up by asking you about artificial intelligence. You talked about Chat GPT. How efficient is AI in writing a show? I mean, I know kids were leveraging it for school papers. I guess they got over a little bit on some of their professors, but how is artificial intelligence at a point where they could write an episode of Friends or Seinfeld? Does it have the intellectual capability to be, there's just something about being a comedian and being an actual human to anticipate how someone's going to react?
I mean, the thing is that the Chat GPT came only last year. The large language model, they're kind of in infancy. Imagine how the technology moves, 10 years down the line, what shape will it take form? We really can't make prediction. Though, if you look at the history of the technological growth, most of the time, the technology succeeds when they combine with the human. So human and the technology together create the magic that alone cannot create. So humans alone can't do it, and the technology alone can't do it. So the combination where the Chat GPT with the writer are able to create the magic that we don't know what will happen. So the long and short is that how will it affect the outcome? We don't know, because the growth in the technology, we don't know how much will it grow. I mean, you can imagine the large language model can basically do a pretty good job of what humans do. And a lot of time, the writing is not really high level. A lot of time writing is I don't want to use the word mediocre, but a lot of time the writing is sort of like a middle level.
Yeah, it's
And
bad.
the worry is that the middle level writing, we don't need people. ChatGPT can do it. So, 90% of the work, again, if you take a look at the work, the high end level work, there'll be a huge demand. But the middle level work, which is really where most of the artists, most of the writers are basically right there, that's where the worry is that actually might go away. But then, there's also an opportunity that, with the growth of technology, a lot of companies, they did not use the kind of copyright, the streaming, the advertisement, XYZ. Now they will start using it. So now they will demand more of that. So yes, ChatGPT will do a lot of work, but they will also need humans to be able to integrate that nicely. So I wish I could tell you what the answer will be, but my feeling is that it's going to be some combination based on the history that we know.
Yeah, and last question. I guess if you knew, then we'd already solved the problem. Last question.
And I would be a very rich person.
And you would not be on the show. You'd be somewhere on an island somewhere, probably relaxing. Last question. There has been a lot of, I look at the Indiana Jones movie. They de-aged Harrison Ford. You look at Rogue One, where they brought Grand Moff Tarkin back, played by Peter Cushing, back literally from the dead. How concerned should actors be about their likeness being used and they receiving residual awards for the use of their likeness or their voice or other parts of their personality, going into the future with AI?
I mean, all we heard is like basically anecdotes. We haven't seen any substantial work going that direction. But you're right, the likeness might play a role. Again, there has to be a way to have some sort of a likeness to be used, and maybe that's pretty substantial. But again, those are the questions we don't have answered, but that's exactly what the AI can do. What AI can do is a big unknown. If you've been hearing all the Congress is trying to put the guardrails around the Googles and the Microsoft that, hey, use the AI responsibly, what is responsible? How much to be used? How can we use the technology? And our universities who work extensively in these kind of models. So yeah, all these are very uncertain. There's no like a clear-cut answer. But my feeling is that the technology growth eventually does something good. It's going to produce some outcome. Maybe there's going to be redistribution of what happens, but hopefully the welfare overall will actually go up.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping. Look, if they want to digitize me and they want to do shows 100 years from now on the Broadcast Retirement Network, I guess I would take it. And my heirs, whomever,
as long as you get compensation.
Absolutely. I was going to say, as long as my heirs get compensation, my nieces, my nephews, their children, etc. Rahul, we're going to have to leave it. Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I think that's exactly what will happen.
Yeah, well, we're going to see Jeff Snyder into the 22nd century along with Star Trek. Rahul, we're going to leave it there. Great conversation. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. I enjoyed it.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, visit our website, and of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN Weekly. We'll bring back Jane King live from the NASDAQ to talk to us about the markets, and then we'll be taking a look back at some of our best segments for the week. You're not going to want to miss it. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.